Hey listeners, it's Tim. Just a quick note to let you know that due to popular demand and limited places, we've just opened up enrollment for the next cohort of our flagship 12-week studio transformation program. Applications are now invited from teachers who are eager to revolutionize their studio teaching and business practices through weekly group meetings, the guidance of our incredible facilitators, and our Presto framework. Teachers involved can also complete Top Music certification at the same time. To find out more and submit your application, head to topmusic.co/12WST. That's the numbers 12WST today. You're listening to the Topcast, the original podcast for growth-minded instrumental music and voice teachers since 2015, with your host, Tim Topham. Our mission at Top Music is to empower instrumental music and voice teachers to find and nurture their innate creativity so that they can teach lessons that are innovative, integrated, and inspiring, and that will have a positive, lifelong impact on their students. Join us each week as we interview teachers and creators from around the world and unpack fun and exciting ideas to maximize your teaching and studio business success. Hey teachers, welcome back to the Topcast. It's Tim here again, and I'm back. I hope you've been enjoying the Assess, Plan, and Execute program that Tara has been sharing with you over the last few months. I think it's a great one to start the year and something that you can also go back to whenever you need it if you want to just bookmark those episodes and check in with them again. If you have enjoyed that kind of audio course, then we also have our Studio Success Path audio course inside our Lite membership, which is available at topmusicpro.com. It's a great opportunity to dip your toe into a really considered, structured roadmap for organizing your studio and your business and just getting started on some of those aspects. And you can do that all in our Lite membership, which is just $10 a month. And we're going to be talking about that membership a little bit later today because we're about to meet our Top Music Sheets composer for this month, the incredible Kai Ono. But before that, I did want to just say, I hope your year started well. I know things have been really busy for most of you since we've already got back. And a lot of you are already thinking ahead to, okay, summer camp's coming up. I should probably get enrollments organized. A number of you have done recitals already, and I just know things are getting busier as we go. So thank you so much for tuning in. I really do appreciate it. I really value the time that you spend listening and learning on this podcast, and I really hope your students are getting benefit from the learning that you're doing. If you've missed it, we've actually already launched 2 new courses here in Top Music Pro. One all about hiring teachers for those of you who are interested in doing that in the future or have already started. Incredible resources there for how to interview, what to look for, contracts, all of those kinds of things. And just recently, we also launched our Jam Sessions course, which is also available as a one-off purchase at topmusic.co/courses. And that one is all about improv in groups and one-on-one situations. And you get to see group improv live, warts and all teaching, as I called it. And Beck, who has created this course, doesn't mind me saying it. You get to see inside her studio as she improvises with groups of students and also with one-on-one students. It's fantastic. So I really hope that our members have been enjoying that. And if you would like to access that course, as I said, you can just buy a one-off access to it, no subscription, over at topmusic.co/courses. Also coming up really, really soon in April, we're releasing our long-awaited Canva for Music Teachers course with both beginner and advanced modules. So even if you are a Canva user, you're going to get lots of value from this as well, including some bonus content about Canva's new AI capabilities and how teachers can use that. We have lots more planned for you to support your teaching this year coming up, but I don't want to spend too much more time on that right now because I want to get to our fantastic guest. So let me introduce Kai Ono. He's a composer, pianist, singer-songwriter from Queens, New York. He's a winner of the NFMC Awards for his classical writing and the ASCAP Herb Alpert Award for his jazz writing. Kai commands a musical style that sways between the cathartic and the intimate, the academic and the intuitive, the traditional and the new. And you'll hear that today as he gives us a selection of some of the pieces in the new Top Music Sheets collection he's created for us. As an educator, Kai teaches a wide gamut of skills, including composition, music theory, playing and improvising popular styles, production, songwriting, and of course, classical piano. Welcome to the show, Kai. It is so great to be spending some time with you.
Hello. Yes, it's great to be here.
You're the first person that I've actually interviewed who's actually holding a mic. I feel like you're kind of on stage or about to perform.
Well, I have another mic that is mounted kind of like yours, but typically when I teach, I just hold this nowadays. I could get a stand, but my setup is such that I have three keyboards and then I'm also usually putting like my desk here. So I have a lot of things around, just don't quite have room for like a mic stand around here. So I've just gotten used to holding it for lessons that are remote.
Hopefully, we'll find out later why you have three keyboards around you while you teach. But before that, I just wanted to say thank you so much for being this month's featured Top Music Sheets composer. We met through Brock, I think at MTNA or one of those. Yeah. And for those who don't know, Brock was our Top Music Sheets composer for July last year. He also publishes some of your music too, I think, doesn't he?
That's right.
Yeah, fantastic. And I just know your collection is going to really appeal to our members and their students, so really appreciate it again. But before we get started, why don't we just start with one of your pieces? You've got the piano there. Are you happy to play one?
Yes, I'll do a piece from my collection of For the Little Birds, which is one of the books that I have published with my melodies. The book is mainly mid-early elementary to late elementary. And I'll play one first that's from a later selection. This one's called When a Swallow Sits Silently by the Window.
Bravo. That was a very cool shift in harmony just towards the end there. What happened? That was cool.
Yeah. That one's just like a little modal shift going into just having the students stay on fourths, but going on to the black keys at the end there.
Yeah, and for those listening, the sound's a little bit different. Kai has a different keyboard that he's got access to now than normally, but I actually kind of like it. Kai, what's a lot of the pieces that you've shared with us are about birds. What's the connection with you and birds?
It's pretty simple. I just really like birds. I generally like to be looking up when I walk, and so that ends up being like trees, birds, and the sky, and then tends to be the things that I am most interested in. So like things that fly and are in the air, but birds in particular are like a big extra favorite. I just love that the main way bird interaction happens for people that are into birds is just looking at them and being like, yes, that is that bird. And I just love that very candid, separate, respectful interaction with nature. So
let's talk about your composing. Firstly, is composing your main sort of income, or do you perform and teach and things like that as well? And I'm just interested to know if you are solely a piano composer or you work with other instruments.
Yeah, so I am not solely a composer. I do a lot of things. My most regular gig is teaching, and then comes performing, and then composing is a mixed bag. It's tricky what things to start to call and not start to call composing. For example, I produce for artists, so like that is composition, absolutely, but just not in the traditional classical sense. I have actually lately not been accepting commissions. I used to be doing them pretty like constantly, especially immediately after finishing my schooling, but I one day kind of just decided I'm not going to accept any more commissions and focus a little bit more on my popular music side as far as writing goes. But I definitely do write a lot for other instruments. I started off by just wanting to write music for my friends. And so what that meant for a lot of people was just like, I want to write a percussion ensemble piece. But of course, I didn't really play percussion. So I would write music that's terribly hard, impossible to play for these marimba players. So I did the most logical thing and learned how to play marimba. And that happened for instrument after instrument after instrument. So I ended up learning how to play a decent number of concert instruments just in service of trying to write pieces for friends, and also eventually just like wanting to write orchestral and band music. So that was kind of my early journey also with composition. So that's what ended up having me write so much music for other instruments outside of piano.
That's an incredible skill, because I've often wondered, for people who compose for orchestras and bands, how do you possibly know how to write for all those different instruments, the capacity for a regular player of all those instruments? So you've actually gone to the trouble of learning a whole lot of them, which would be a huge help for writing for them.
It does help. It's a little overkill for orchestral playing, for sure. It's in a good zone when it comes to writing for someone in a solo context. So when I wrote like a trumpet and piano piece, I mean, I haven't played trumpet, but I've played euphonium before, and it's the same fingering and similar dexterity as trumpet. So that helped a lot. So I could, and then in those contexts, I also just ask directly the friend, like, what are you like especially good at? And what can I write for you that will particularly show off your technical skills as a player?
I'd like to come back to your composing later, but firstly, we've got a lot of teachers obviously listening. Tell us about your teaching. Do you teach in person, online, adults, kids? And why do you have 3 pianos or keyboards?
I teach pretty 50-50 adults and kids. I teach mostly in person. I usually just go to students' places, but I have a few online students, some because they're just geographically very far, some just because they prefer it and it's convenient for both of us. But my composing, actually, I'll start from answering the 3 pianos question, because that will lead to the next answer. Is so I have 3 pianos because that's kind of what I do as a performer. So when I'm like a sideman in bands, I'm at least playing with 2 keyboards. Right now, I'm on tour with this band, and they have me playing 3 keyboards. And actually, I'm not. One of them is not even mine. The band is giving me one that they specifically want me to use, and I'm on. So that's why I only have 1 keyboard here. I usually have one right here, and then another one right here. So those 2 are not here right now. But yeah, so I'm on tour right now with 3 keyboards, and it's just nice to have 3 keyboards. I mean, I love the piano, and the piano is my first and primary love for sure. And if I could have a piano in this small apartment in Queens, I absolutely would. But right now, it's just not a realistic feasibility to have a piano in this apartment. So what I do if I want access to a piano for my practice is I just rent studio time at a friend's recording studio. But the other keyboards all have their own utilities, generally for synthesizers. So I have the one that's usually here, which is like a blue synth by this amazing British company called Udo. It's like a fairly newer synth company. They make this one called the Super 6. And that one's great for these like huge clouds of sounds. And then this one is great. This one's a more recent one called the Expressive E Osmos. And this one's unique because I can do a lot of like expressive
I heard that as you were playing.
And I can also do vibrato on it, which is really crazy.
Huh.
So that's what I have this one for. So it's for that kind of experimental and also sometimes just extra expressive stuff. And then my last is just a Nord, which is the one that is the substitute for a piano.
Okay, got it. What is the band that you're playing in? What kind of music do they play?
I'm touring with a band called Melt. They are like an indie rock soul group from New York. Actually, I was a very last minute addition to their tour. Just with a lot of complications, the week before they left, they were like, "We need someone right now." I was like, "Are your next 3-4 weeks free?" And I was like, "I have to make a bunch of calls, but maybe I can make it happen." And somehow I was able to sub out everything that I had to sub out. So
you must be an incredibly versatile musician to be able to jump in to something like that. I would be terrified.
Not to toot my own horn, but I am pretty good at a lot of different styles of piano for sure. This is also having to do with background vocals, and definitely like in the pop realm, the difficulty that's tested there is the demand to learn a lot of music and memorize it very fast. So I had to learn like an hour and a half of music in a day and memorize it in a day. Like that is a lot.
Wow. That's a lot. Jeez.
But it's not note by note memorization like in classical. So that's the saving grace.
It's chords, structures,
Right. A lot of
Yep.
forms.
Yeah, fantastic. So I'm keen to just dive back into your childhood to find out, well, what's got you to this position, because you're quite a unique musician by the sounds of things and teacher. So I'm interested, did you have quite creative improvisationary kind of lessons as a child?
I started off with the Yamaha music school. Even though I personally don't teach group lessons, I find that their approach to group lessons was very effective for a lot of reasons. One, just to have, well, I think one is the more clear pro for group lessons, which is just the social aspect of being able to be around other friends of the same age and us be able to progress and motivate each other. Specifically with the Yamaha school, there was a few things that definitely impacted me very strongly. One of those being they have us sing solfege fixed do from like day one. So everyone in my class had perfect pitch. Perfect pitch is in and of itself maybe contentious, whether it's like an objective good or not, perhaps, but it was nice to at least have a singing foundation very early on to train our ears one way or another, whether it's hearing it relatively or absolutely. We were doing like a lot of ear training in a group setting, and I think that was very helpful. And like you were asking about improvisation, they had us writing and improvising very early on. Probably from when I was 8, when we started doing private lessons separately from the group lessons, we had the choice, well, sort of the choice. Pretty much everyone had to write music. And we were also doing improv from that age very early on. And for improv is a generous word. It's really just light theme and variations is all it really was. We just were given a very simple theme, and it's like, can we add some eighth notes to fill in gaps, or can we change the rhythm? Can we switch the modality of it? Very, very simple, small changes, but we were forced to do it on the fly. So it was improv.
Yeah. Our community manager here, Beck, is an ex-Yamaha teacher and teacher trainer, and she just did a webinar with me this week. And one of the activities, it was all about improvising in groups and solo. And one of the activities was theme and variations, just such a simple way to dip students' toes in the water of improvising without stressing them out that they've got to use every one of those 88 keys.
Right. Because definitely the main thing that paralyzes new students to composition and improvisation is just the sheer amount of choices and the paralyzing paradox of choice.
Yeah. It was great to hear you talk about singing right from the beginning. That's something that I promote in my book, No Book Beginners, is all about the importance of singing and creativity and imagination and all those things. They're the things that we want in those first few lessons. And I know that there are approaches like Yamaha that also do that same thing. It's just so critical. So for the teachers out there listening, if you're wondering what a really creative singing-based first few lessons can have, here's Kai for you. Now creating, composing, playing in bands, that's what we want to hear.
I think it does nurture a very holistic build of a person for as far as their relationship with music goes, whether they go into music or not.
Why don't we have a listen to one of the other pieces from the collection? Would you be happy to play another one?
Sure thing. This time I'll play When a Kingfisher Watches the River Flow By. This one's the first piece from my elementary book. And yeah, here we go. Bravo. It was one of my favorites actually from the collection. I'm really glad you played that one. I really like it.
Because it's got that sort of little bit of pop sensibility to it with the dun 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 bum da ba, that kind of offbeat last beat of the bar, and the left hand playing. It's kind of simple, but really effective.
Thank you.
Really like it. So let's talk a little bit more about your composing. Probably, I mean, it sounded like it started right from the beginning, but when did it get serious? Did you go to university and study music?
I did. I would say that definitely is around when it got really serious. I was writing a lot already, pretty much since middle school, but I originally went to school, or I got into school for classical piano, but I think before even my first semester finished, I already knew that I was not going to be satisfied with just a classical piano major. So I found a way to get a double major in classical piano and classical composition. So I studied both of those while also taking jazz lessons. I really this is still narrowing it down a lot from all the things I was doing in like high school. But yeah, like even in college, I really couldn't narrow it down to just one major. And so I kind of pursued all three of those things in tandem throughout my 4 years.
Right. Well, you're probably able to. I mean, they would speak to each other in different ways as well. That's not a bad thing at all to have that variety, and you can bring all of those styles and genres into your composing, I would imagine.
The fact doing all three helps composition the most, for sure.
Yeah. Do you have some favorite composers, either dead or, in fact, maybe a few that are past and some that are living, perhaps?
Sure, yeah. So as far as composers of the past, my very early influences probably were early 1900s French composers like Ravel and Debussy. I think those were some of the first pieces I was playing on the piano and thought, this like music is so awesome. The depth of expression that someone can generate off of such a mundane piece of scenery is just profoundly moving for me. And back then, especially, I was very fascinated with trying to make drama out of very small things. So seeing that kind of music was deeply inspiring for me. As far as people living go, especially nowadays, the influences are pretty all around. I have a lot of like favorite musicians that are strong improvisers that influence my writing and playing. It's hard to nowadays point to a specific living composer and call that my influence, especially since a lot of my early build up as a composer was actually off of experimenting rather than imitating. So even my earlier pieces didn't really sound that much like Debussy or Ravel. Some of them definitely did, but there were some that, like many that strayed much further from it, especially as I was already just like listening to a lot of popular music and jazz music. So I was just starting to play just the modal whateverness on the piano. I kind of made these like exercises for myself to develop some like modal fluency on the piano. Things like just going up of like on up a diatonic scale with like just fourths or like fifths or clusters to just be like, how confident am I with like the 4-flat mode and things like that, and then writing or improvising honestly in a way that just jumps between those modes. I think that kind of just practice ended up building more of my writing style today. That having been said, I do have a few favorites for sure living. Like I think easy one I can name is Stevie Wonder. I think this is like songwriting absolute genius. It's like second to none. And then there's some more like popular artists as well that have influenced me, but like like songwriters like Stevie Wonder, it's hard to match that. And then as far as like jazz pianists go, there's a lot of influences as well. I really like he's a younger guy, but this guy James Francis, incredible pianist. I also still love Bill Evans, still love Keith Jarrett, still love Art Tatum. Art Tatum was like a big influence for me as well. And Errol Garner was probably the one that one of the ones I studied the most to try to sound like an actual proper jazz musician at one point. Even though those are not like composers per se, they still like compose in that they are improvising and they have their own harmonic language. And so as I listen and transcribe them, it definitely starts to seep into my writing, regardless of the genre that I'm working under.
Would you class yourself as a pedagogical composer in inverted commas? One that sort of thinks, oh, this would be a great way to help this student do that, and this is about thirds and fourths or whatever it is?
Despite all I just said, as when I write specifically in a classical medium for the piano, I would say yes. That's just the larger body of my work at this point. And it is pretty hard to escape those thoughts. I have had the conditioning to always be thinking about how idiomatic my writing is for players, given the whole thing I was saying also about just like writing for my friends and it was too hard for them. So it's like, oh, if I write pieces that like no one can play, then I will never get to hear it exist.
Yeah, what's the point, right?
Right. Well, what is the point? And the more technically feasible I can make a piece, the more people can play it. And then that just starts to burn another kind of passion in me, which is like this puzzle to create the best thing I can out of the greatest technical limitations. Like, what if this student can't even reach a fifth yet? That's how I wrote Swallow. I wrote When a Swallow Sits on the Windowsill. I had a student who's 5, but couldn't reach a fifth. She had tiny hands. I mean, she could, but she was like this, reaching a fifth. And so I was like, I need to find a piece with fourths that's going to sound good in a recital. So I just couldn't find anything that I felt compelled by. And also anything else that I found had melodies that were too complicated. So I just ended up writing a piece for her. And that kind of goes with a lot of my pieces from this selection, actually. A lot of them are just pieces I wrote for students. Most of the time, I was aiming for some technical thing to work on for the student. And so they have some emphasis in some technique. So for that specific student, and also in some ways to flatter certain elements of that student.
Given your own experience with improvising as you were growing up, I imagine that you teach and you encourage that in your own students. Given that, I'm going to make I'm going to guess that that's right. Do you have any suggestions for other teachers listening about some simple ways that they can do the same thing with their students, if they're not already doing it?
Even though I'm not one for large blanket prescriptive advice, I think this one does hold true pretty universally, is that if the teacher is an awesome improviser and composer, then the student will start. I apply this ethos to just like piano teaching in general. It's like, if I shine on the piano and that is inspiring to the students, that will just motivate them. Because I don't want to be a piano teacher that makes students go, if being a pianist is like that, then I don't want to do piano. I want students to think, and so that's not even just like my teaching or my playing. That's also like my personality. Like I have to be an interesting human for the students. Otherwise, they're gonna not like music. And this is all part of being a good advocate for like classical or any kind of music, really. Whatever I'm teaching them, my playing is all part of this advocacy. So I think that it's imperative for a teacher to also be a avid composer themselves. If they are already, then I think it's great to just like have that presented to the student as much as possible, and that kind of just gets the flame going most of the time. I have a lot of students. I do teach a decent amount of students composition solely, and all of those were just elective. I think that tends to be the case, like pretty much across the market. Like piano's lessons, parents will sometimes make their students or make kids get it, but very rarely do you see parents making students get composition lessons. Those are almost entirely elective. So that can only really come out of just like spurred passion, I think.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I also don't want to discourage teachers who don't feel that they're very good at improvising and composing to not give it a try with their students. I think it's really important that we kind of mention that, because I know that 90% of teachers listening to this will not feel confident, and they don't. But I don't think that's a reason to stop them trying.
I 100% agree. I want to, yes, and I'm so glad you said that. That's a very, very important caveat. I have this in my books as well. A lot of my pieces have these little improvisational, compositional exercises tied with them. In the foreword, I mentioned pretty much exactly what you're saying. In fact, I would say that going back to being an interesting human to be an advocate for music, I think that a teacher that's willing to go through those exercises with their students and kind of learn these things besides them is a great opportunity to connect with the students. I by no means am I when I say all the things I was saying before, am I referring to like necessarily like prowess or excellence? I just mean like it could be so many forms. It could be just your passion. It could just be your desire to learn. It could be curiosity. There's so many pedagogical virtues that a teacher can exhibit in those kinds of moments.
So I think we've got time for one more piece, if you're happy to play one more from your collection.
All right. This one will be when a blue jay hoards a cache of nuts.
Okay. Very imaginative titles, Kai.
I just like how these birds act, like for example with blue jays, they're very closely related to crows, and one thing that these kinds of like corvid adjacent birds do is they're really good at like ganging up on a bigger bird to chase them away, but they're actually prone to being chased away by smaller birds than themselves as well, which is like a really hilarious dynamic. So like when there are bird feeders, a bunch of sparrows might just like pressure a blue jay away from it, even though sparrows in the bird world are way smaller. So I just think that's so funny. So what blue jays do is they'll take a bunch of nuts and they just run away with them and they hide them somewhere because they can't take the heat. All right, so this is where the blue jay hoards a cache of nuts.
I didn't think I'd be learning about birds on today's episode, but that's great.
Ah, yes. You never know.
Love it. Really nice. Like the vibrato. So Kai, because most of you are listening, is shaking his fingers side to side. And on that keyboard, that translates into vibrato. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I do love this instrument. It takes some time getting used to, but I just love the expressive capability of it.
Yeah, that's really cool. Nice piece too. I love that you can hear the jazz influences, obviously, and very modal, as you said as well. Do you find more expression or freedom in modes?
Yeah, because I think I'm trying to think of how to summarize this so that it doesn't go like forever long because I have so much thoughts on this whole idea. But okay, I don't necessarily think that modes are more expressive. At this point, I'm just more comfortable with them. That having been said, one thing that I do love about studying modal harmony is that it puts the writer or improviser or whatever in a space where they are forced to perceive most any all-tonal music in a more broad contour-based lens. And so it forces people to think very melodically in a way that tonal music doesn't quite do, because tonal music is so strongly dictated by harmony. If anyone wants to hear more about that, they can ask me directly, because that would be a lot to elaborate on.
I think that's a good summary. I think there's somehow more freedom or flexibility or something. It feels like, anyway.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. I'm not a composer and I'm not a whiz with modes, but that's the sense I get from listening actually to your music. And I hope people listening who are, and myself included, pretty grounded in tonal harmony, can expand our thinking and open up to some of these sounds, because I think students will really genuinely love them. And now I've got a taste of 3 of the pieces from this collection. I hope teachers listening will be like, wow, this is actually something really good to explore, because it's unusual in many ways. So thanks for bringing that to us. So as we wrap up, I just wanted to ask, there are other teacher composers listening, and I'm interested to know about your experience working on TopMusicSheets and what you would say to them if they're interested in becoming involved.
Oh, it was great. I mean, how amazing it is to have someone like Albert on the team. I am a sucker for details and pedantic editing. And when I got those edits from Albert, I could not have been happier. It's things like and mind you, we have actually gotten a round of edits from like an Alfred editor in the past, and even despite those rounds of editing, Albert's like, this thing is inconsistent with this, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I never stop seeing things like this. This is crazy. And then I have to mention just how phenomenal they made it look. I am definitely so happy. I love, love, love how it looks in the books that My Melodies published. That having been said, in it was extremely refreshing to see how Top Music revamped it and kept the art too. It was very flattering.
Wow, that's fantastic to hear. It sounds like you learned a lot in the process, even though you are published and you've done a lot of this work in the past. There's still some things that you're able to pick up.
Endless.
That's awesome. That's really, really great. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think you better tell everybody where they can find out more about you and all your amazing compositions.
To follow me, I think my main social media is I am OK Kai. Kai is spelled Kai. Just to spell that out, that's IAMOKKAI. And for my music, all my pedagogical music is with My Melodies. That's my-melodies.com. And yeah, that's with Brock. Brock published both my For the Little Birds, which is the aforementioned one for elementary level students. And then I have another book called For the Birds, which is for intermediate students.
And obviously, if teachers in our membership are interested, they will have access to your fantastic collection in their inbox already. And for teachers listening who aren't yet a member, come and join us on our light plan, $10 a month, and you get collections from incredible people like Kai each and every month in your inbox, all studio licensed, ready to go, topmusicpro.com. Kai, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been wonderful. And again, thanks so much for the collection.
Thank you so much, Tim.
I do hope you enjoyed meeting Kai, our Top Music Sheets composer for this month. Now, if you would like to hear more of the pieces that he played to get a sense of what is in the collection, then we actually release recordings of every piece from every collection on our SoundCloud account. If you'd like to find out where that is, you can probably search for it in SoundCloud, but if you want the link, just head to the show notes for today's episode, which is at topmusic.co/episode 406. As I mentioned in the show, if you'd like to get hold of Kai's collection, that is this month's Top Music Sheets, the collections that we give all of our members, including those on our light plan. Just head over to TopMusicSheets.com if you'd like to get more information about the Top Music Sheets collections, what they look like, how they work, and to get involved inside that part of our membership. Well, that's the end of the show for this week. Thank you for having me back. Thank you for tuning in. And I do hope you enjoy the music that Kai has created for us. Next week on the podcast is a big name that you're all going to know, the one and only Andrea Dow from Teach Piano Today. I've wanted to get her on the show for years, literally, and we finally managed to do it. Can't wait to share that interview with you this time next week. Until then, I'm Tim Topham, and you've been listening to the Topcast. Can't wait to catch you next week. How do you keep up to date with all the latest trends and research into music education? How do you connect with other teachers around the world and make sure your teaching stays fresh and relevant for students of all ages and stages, both now and into the future? I created our Top Music Pro membership to be the one-stop shop for music teaching resources, training, support and community, and I'd love for you to come and join us inside. With over 40 comprehensive training courses, hundreds of teaching demonstrations and lesson plans, free monthly sheet music, discounts, and all the business and pedagogy support you could ever need, Top Music Pro is the community you've been looking for. If you're ready to level up your learning from the podcast and join thousands of other teachers in our global network, head over to topmusicpro.com today. If you enjoy this show and want to hear more of our work, be sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening today. For links and resources mentioned in this episode, visit us at topmusic.co/podcast or check out the show notes. I'm Tim Topham. Thank you so much for listening. Enjoy your week ahead, and I'll catch you next time.